Calvinismo versus arminianismo. Tenemos un video cortito de esto. A ver, vamos a ver de qué se trata. Para nosotros que estamos adentrándonos en este tema, necesitamos tomar una postura al respecto. A ver, muchos discuten este tema. A ver qué es lo que dice nuestro amigo Cliff, el apologot. A ver.
I've made many friends all throughout the world through my desire to know more about God and the Bible. Some of these friends are Calvinists and others are Arminianists. My question to you is, in a Christian worldview, what approach is more biblically accurate?
A ver, a ver, a ver. ¿Cuál es más acertado desde el enfoque bíblico, el calvinismo o el arminianismo?
Seem to contradict each other. And as we know, neither God nor his written word, the Bible, can contradict each other or themselves. One of these approaches to the Christian worldview is wrong, and I would love to know your opinion as to which one and why.
Okay.
Followers of Christ disagree. The Calvinist position is God is sovereign, predestination, works. Arminianism teaches God has chosen to give us free will. We have a free will, and we are responsible for what we do. I like the way Paul puts it in Philippians 2:12 and 13. He writes, "Work out your salvation with fear and trembling, for it is God who is at work within you." There are those two ideas, the sovereignty of God and free will, side by side. And Paul does not explain how they come together. He puts those two ideas, the sovereignty of God, the power of God, and free will, side by side, and he does not explain how they come together perfectly.
Me gustó la cita.
Work out your salvation with fear and trembling. That's free will. You work out your salvation with fear and trembling. For it is God who is at work within you. There's the power of God, the sovereignty of God at work in our lives. It's fascinating to study the Hebrew mindset regarding the sovereignty of God and free will. For instance, in the book of Job, Satan comes to Job and asks for permission to toss Job about and make him suffer. God grants Satan permission. So who's actually bringing suffering into Job's life? It is Satan. But who's given Satan permission to do that? God. 2 Samuel chapter 24, verse 1, we read, God incited David to count the fighting men, and then judges him for it. But in 1 Chronicles 21:1 we read, Satan incited David to count the fighting men, and then God judges him for it. So who does it? Is it God or is it Satan who incites David to count the fighting men? According to the Hebrew understanding, God is ultimately sovereign. He's ultimately in control. He's ultimately all-powerful. But Satan is given power and can do things. So ultimately, God is in control, but Satan has free will. You and I have free will. I love the way C.S. Lewis puts it when he points out, the all-powerful God has chosen to partially limit his power by giving us free will. But there will be a day of judgment when you and I are held responsible by the all-powerful God for the decisions that we have freely made. Because we have free will, we are responsible. When I fall down a set of stairs, I don't pick myself up at the bottom and say, phew, I'm glad that's over. That's determinism. That's fatalism. No. When I fall down a set of stairs, I pick myself up at the bottom and say, idiot, pick up your feet and don't stumble. It's not written in the stars. God has given you and me free will. We are responsible for what we do. At times we make mistakes. At times we do a good job. At times we choose to sin. At times we choose to do that which is righteous and good and pleasing to God. We have been given a degree of free will. The all-powerful God has chosen to partially limit his power by giving us this free will.
Tengo que ser sincero, compré. Probablemente algún calvinista, algún arminiano puede levantar alguna objeción al respecto a estas ideas, ¿no? Como yo soy una persona que recién está interiorizándose en esta discusión del mundo evangélico, yo compré esta explicación. Evidentemente la Biblia enseña que Dios es soberano, pero a su vez enseña que hay un libre albedrío. No explica cómo es que se da esta relación, no lo explica. Para nosotros es un misterio, pero que ambos ¿Son evidentes en el mensaje bíblico? Lo son. Yo, la verdad, compré la explicación. Decime vos qué opinás al respecto.